This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening to all. Uh, in today's session in Bheshaj Rachana Parishad, I welcome Dr. M. Gopikrishna Madikere sir. Uh, he is known Rasavidya. Currently he is working as an HOD and professor in the Department of Rasashastra and Vaisheshya Kalpana at SJG Ayurved Medical College, Koppal, Karnataka. He has assisted Professor Siddhinandan Mishra in translating Anandakanda from Sanskrit to Hindi, Rasaratnakar from Talpatra of Telugu to Sanskrit. Also, he is pioneer in many preparations of rasaushadis. He is collaborated with many modern research institutes like National Institute of Technology, Surathkal, Transdisciplinary University, Bangalore. He has attended and presented many research papers at national and international seminars. He has been keynote speaker at many seminars. Uh, he is pioneer in Rasashastra. With this brief introduction, I request sir to start his session. Sir, please start. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I would like to welcome all the delegates, and I would like to acknowledge the whole team of Shreyas Learning, Dr. Chinmay Pondekar and his team, for making this beautiful course to happen and help the people to understand how is the basics or some of the things which is going on in related to the drug designing and other aspects. Today, I am being asked to speak about the biological drug designing, specifically with the Rasaushadis in the light of bioinformatics, special reference to Hemagarbha in brain receptor proteins. Basically, it happens the very first thing is the necessity is the mother of inventions. What make us to really intervene to understand this concept of bioinformatics? Why do we need this? What happens in case if you are not adopting bioinformatics? Is it mandate? Is it acceptable for us, or is it acceptable to the modern world, or is it a mere time waste? How we need to understand this particular phenomenon to address many of uh, these issues. I'll try to put up briefly about few of the ideologies about what is this biological drug designing, especially through the bioinformatics, and how is that we have done some basic attempts to understand how this is feasible for us to uh, take up the science to a new level, to the new horizon of where we can really understand it in a better way. And of course, the utility of the bioinformatics in drug designing and other aspects. And I would like to focus a little bit of what was our efforts of understanding the bioinformatics in respect to Rasaushadis and how we could do with special reference to Hemagarbha Potali. When we go through to understand the science as it is, the basics which is given by the Acharya in the Anandakanda Amrutikarana Ullas is about Sarasah Kramate Dehe Siddhaya Sambhavantihi Rasayane tu Yaha Proktha Mulika Deh Siddhidaha. He knew about the assimilation of the drug in the body because many times it happens people speak about the heavy metals or the basmas which we give, much of it comes out in the fecal matter in the animals, and they say like your drug is not absorbed, but I don't know why that miraculous clinical response is seen in the people. uh, whether everything is a placebo effect, even to the animals or even to the humans. The way how we are practicing is a great question mark and a query which needs to be understood or which need to be addressed. Because the textbook of Rasashastra has said like, Sir Rasaha Kramate Dehe, means the drug which you have taken is assimilated all over the body. It spreads all over the body. And then it gives a Siddhaya Sambhavantihi. Then it gives Siddhi, Deha Siddhi. Say, for example, the person is suffering from Jvara, a biological drug, or you have prepared some herbo mineral or a mineral composition and you have given to the patient. As per this reference, it indicates like Kramate Dehe. Rasaha is a metallo-mineral preparation. Kramate Dehe, it spreads or assimilates all over the body. Siddhaya Sambhavantihi, then it causes some siddhi. A person is taken a drug, a rasa called as Mrutyunjaya rasa, he is suffering from fever. Kramate Dehe, the Mrutyunjaya rasa spreads all over to the body. Then it causes Siddhaya Sambhavanti. It causes Jvara Mukta to the patient. Siddhi, he attains a Siddhi, is away from Jvara. So Siddhaya Sambhavantihi. And in case Rasayane tu ya prokta mulika de siddhidaha. In case if you want to achieve the Rasayana effect of the same, then you have to admix it with the mulika, herbo mineral composition, by which you get a deha siddhi. So anyway, we are not speaking about difference of opinions between the herbal and a mineral composition. After all, we are humans, and Ayurveda accepts both the system of medicine as Dravyaguna and Rasa Shastra as a herbo mineral compositions which attributes or which contributes a great health benefits to the humans is being assimilated or absorbed or which is spreading throughout the body, and then it causes the siddhi. And also when you are adjoining it with the herbal drug or a herbal composition, then it causes the rasayana effect. It's not just entering into the GIT and just evacuated in the bowels, as you see in some of the animals, because once you give some micrograms or some milligrams of basmas to the animal, much of it is being seen in the fecal matter in case if you can go for an analysis on the next day. Speaking like the scientist or the person who is there conducting this experiment might objective stating like at least more than 75-80% of the drug is come out in the fecal matter. So what is that it is being absorbed, or sometimes even up to 90-95% is coming out. So what is that it's happening? Whether the drug what you are giving is really effective to the animal or whether it is really fruitful in administering to the animal. Because we are the people who are really fascinated to understand the science in a form of a pratyaksha pramana. We still have lots of doubts and queries on our samhitas because we don't believe much about the aptavachana. Instead, we want to cross confirm it by seeing the pratyaksha pramana in the animals. But it's not like to say that we need not conduct it or we need to conduct it. The matter here is how to understand it. So here what happens, very small concentrations of the drug which is still assimilated in the animal out of some 3% or 5% of the basma which has been assimilated into the body tissue of the animal is quite sufficient enough to cause that therapeutic variation in an animal. That is the reason why Rasaushadis are being praised in the textbook as Alpamatrasya Upayogitvat, Aruchir, Aprasangatvat, Kshipram Arogyadhayitvat, Aushadebhyadiko Rasaha. So Alpamatra is enough. Very small concentrations of it is enough, but still, as a sort of where we don't want to have an excuse, the Acharya has asked us to give particular tentative dosage forms. Might be it is 65 milligram or 125 milligram. Out of that might be 90-95% of it is coming out in the fecal matter, sometimes not always, but that small amount is still being absorbed across the mucous membrane in the gut, and which causes the siddhi. And this is what the reference speaks about, sir rasah kramate dehe siddhaya sambhavantihi. But whether this 3%, 5%, 20% is really assumable in the body, or just we are conversing here across to run up with the slides. Let us try to again re-evaluate ourselves. Let us try to understand what is that actually happening. Normally, it has been believed like, because why I use the word believed like is we consider like the science which the people know today is the ultimate. But when I speak about this concentrated words, even after 10 years, the thing which they know for today is very less, which they might know in another 10 years might be still more. But Ayurveda is not like that. It is a paripurna subject. But we have to re-evaluate it or re-establish it to make the modern world to understand the concepts of Ayurveda, or to gain the confidence in the budding Vaidyas, so that they can start practicing it in an extensive way, so that they can have a lots of advantage in dealing with it. So once we take the medicines, whatever it is, you take a mineral drug or a herbal drug, whatever it is, it enters into the bloodstreams. How does it go? You have given it through the oral route, possibly, and through that, across the GIT, the drug is being assimilated. So here what happening, a hypothetic way I would like to establish here, because I'll further go into the bioinformatics part here eventually. But normally what happens when we are giving only a herbal drug, say for example, I'm giving some Quata, I'm giving some Swarasa or anything like that. So normally what happens is from the GIT, through the means of osmosis, the drug has to move from the gut into the mucous membrane, and from the mucous membrane to the blood vessels. From there, it goes into extracellular space, then into the intracellular space, and from there, it has to come to the nuclei of the cell, where you have the RNA, DNA, and all those things, where there is some alterations in the genes which has this proteins, amino acids in the DNA, and a repair of these things is causing a disease in an individual. So this Swarasa, Quata, whatever you have given, has to go there and repair some of the issues related to it, sometimes or most of the times. So this is how the person gets healed up. Say for example, a person need to suffer from cirrhosis of a liver, or the person has to suffer from a aplastic anemia, a person has to suffer from malignancies, anything like that. The drug has to show the insult should be at the level of the genetic materials, the DNA, the proteins and the amino acids there, which frames the helix of the DNA, need to be injured or insulted because of some reasons or the genetic material, which makes it to make the person to land up into illness. So the drug whichever you have given, say for example, here it is some Amruta Rishta, might be Sudarshana Khada in a Jwara patient. It has to go on repair those tissues in the body, so that the person will express a normalcy clinically. He becomes apyretic. Then we consider it as Jwara Mukta. So this is how the treatment is being planned with. So by this time, what happens? A herbal media which has to come from the GIT through osmosis enters into the mucosal membrane. Again, through osmosis goes into the extracellular space and then to the intracellular space in the blood vessels, and then have its action. It takes a bit of time. It's not very quick enough because it's a process of osmosis. There is no direct channeling which happens from the GIT into the nuclei of the cells. But most of the times with the mineral drugs or metallo mineral drugs, the pathway is something different. So here what happens, most of these metals and minerals are corrosive in action, and they are sukshma srotogami, they are nanoparticles. Most of them are very, very small or tiny particles which directly penetrate and every cellular structure is having something called as cell membrane, and all the cell membranes are having lipids as a components, and these lipids are being literally burnt, or through which many of the drugs gets penetrated. Might be it is a fat soluble or water soluble, whatever it is, depending on that the pathway differs, but still they get penetrated into the system, and from where they reach up to the genes or the RNA or the DNA factors quite quickly. Because of that corrosive effect, they directly penetrate literally. So that is the reason why you name them as Kshipramarogya, because they act very quickly, very soon they have their effect in the body. So this is a small difference between both the components. But once when you give the components in a mixture, like say for example, I give it as an anupanam, where I mix up a herbo-mineral drug together and I administer it to the person. The alkaloids of a particular substance is being tagged with the metals or a mineral, through which it penetrates and goes into the components of the body and reaches to the space where it has to. It is something like I need to travel to a distance of some 5 or 10 kilometers. I travel it through my car, which makes me to travel quite faster instead of going by a walk. So the same phenomenon happens. When you're giving it along with a mineral or a metallic component, the action is quite quick and even the dosage you need is quite low. This is what been explained by Ayurveda, the science of Ayurveda, where they speak of alpamatrasya upyogitvat, aruchir aprasangatvat, kshipram arogya dayitvat, aushadebhyadikorasaha. So by which you get a very quick action, very soon you can see lots of changes which is happening, and by that what happens, you have a good benefit in a individual. Then later on what happens once this hypothetical action is being seen, there are some components wherein the drug action is still high. The drug action is enough at the GAT level. This particular biological drugs, which is stimulating the receptors of the gut. There are lots of receptors of the whole body component, which is being seen or observed in the GIT. Say, for example, I want to stimulate liver, I want to stimulate brain, I want to stimulate pancreas, I want to stimulate bladder. I have many of those receptors which are needed for the physiological functioning of the organs being placed in the gut. So the basmas or any of the drugs which you are giving, which stimulates these receptor mechanisms, which gives a sort of a triggering effect in the organ proper. So this is also being seen, and this is the reason why we have this Vardhamana Parpati Prayogas. We see the Parpati Prayogas where he asks us to give in a loading dose. Give one rati today, two ratis tomorrow, four ratis the day after, eight ratis is the next day. So we go on giving this loading so that all the receptor mechanisms in the body are being stimulated by achieving such a high concentrations of medicine. Don't ever think so like you're giving some 20 or 30 ratis of some rasaparpati or something to the patient. All the 30 ratis are very comfortably being assimilated into the every nook and corner of the body. No, it stimulates the receptor mechanisms by which the drug action is said to be quite high, by which you find the therapeutic response in an individual. Much of the systemic regulation becomes normal. So, what are these receptors? We could achieve to identify few. I don't say we have achieved everything, but few are being definitely recognized, which are being very well known. That is the reason why the gut is called as one of the master organ. You have, say, for example, a person consumes a small amount of food which is having a gastrocolic reflex. The patient needs to immediately go for a bowel evacuation. Why? He has taken food somewhere very far, around 6 meters away in the oral cavity, but immediately he finds to evacuate the bowels. Gastroceliac reflex. So quick. The same mechanism happens when you give a particular drug to the gut, irresponsible of it not to get absorbed into the system. Also, it can have its therapeutic benefits. This is what is seen many times in the Parpati Kalpanas, by which you get a good response because they stimulate certain set of mm, components which makes this therapeutic action to happen. But anyway, we'll come across all these things once again. I'll even name the receptors which were being identified for the absorption of particular metals which we are using in Rasashastra. So normally what happens, you have the helix formation which is made up of some amino acids and proteins. There are some millions of it. A person needs to fall ill, then somewhere this mechanism is being altered. And if this is not addressed, then the things becomes outworthy, then it becomes very disturbed, then it causes lots of complications in an individual. Now we'll come to the definition of bioinformatics. What is this about? Bioinformatics is an upcoming discipline of life sciences. It is an integration of the computer science, mathematical, and statistical methods to manage and analyze the biological data. The fundamental issues that directly impact an understanding of life at structural, functional, and the molecular level and regulations of the gene expressions can be studied by using the bioinformatic tools. So normally here what happens is much of the biological the drugs whichever you are giving, might be it's a basma or whatever it is being understood by the system or the computer in the field of bioinformatics, and where you will identify it in the form of its structural, functional, and molecular level, and try to give a regulation of the gene expression and try to understand it. I'll come across this still detailedly. To give it in a single sentence, not to confuse you more, bioinformatics is nothing but it's a good, sound, regular biology appropriately dressed so it can fit into a computer. So normally what happens, I want to see, I want to have prepared something called as Swarnabhasma. I have prepared something called as Tamravasma, something like Hemagarbha Pottali, something like. So how should I understand what is the real benefit of this? So normally what we are doing at our institutional level or research level is we prepare it in a standardized way. Then we go for some standard SOP protocols for instrumental techniques of standardization. Then what we do is we give it for the animals initially as an part of animal experimentation, either to assess the therapeutic response of an individual, to assess like where you go for an experimental study, or you have another way is to see for its toxicity, what you call it as acute toxicity, chronic toxicity, subacute toxicity, or LD50, whatever. All these tests are usually being conducted on the animals. Might be take some months and years together to establish. Later on, you go with the therapeutic guidelines, because the problem with Ayurveda is single drug acts at multiple levels. The same drug is good for Jwara, the drug is good for Atisara, it is also good for Kushta, it is also good for some Shwasa, it is good in Vatavyadi, so many things. So you need to establish all these things in animals. And after all, we are the people who are being superimposed by reading the publications of the West, where we speak about heavy metal toxicity, giving metals people will die, and people will be nowhere, your science is a placebo effect, it is something, all those issues. But basically to speak about, are we really giving heavy metals to the patients? Are we giving the same thing as a piece of iron or a copper to the patient to gulp it? No, absolutely no. We are giving a series of changes. We are doing Shodhana, we are doing Marana, then we are doing Amrutikarana, then we are giving it to the patient. Even Acharya has asked us not to bypass any of these techniques. We are supposed to see right from the Grahya Lakshan. He speaks about Ashuddha Parada Lakshanas, Agrahya Parada Lakshanas. You are not supposed to take it. It causes lots of health hazards to the patient. He names it as Kanchuka doshas. He names it as Bhautika doshas. So many things is named. Mlecha and Nepal are the types of tamra. he asked us to take a very good variety of it because it causes side effects, it causes health hazards in an individual. He knew that taking a wrong drug will cause a health hazard. So he is more particular than what we people think about ourselves. He was more concerned, our Acharya was more concerned about the health issues. Just because he has to write some guidelines about some pharmaceutical preparations, he did not fill it. He was a most intelligent person who has appropriately dressed all the materials in a very appropriate way. So here what's happening is, by the time you perform all these things, you perform the Graha Lakshana, Shodhana, Marana, you remove the blemishes out of it, then you're preparing a very ideal Basma, then you prepare the Basma Siddhi Lakshanas, then you prepare some formulations and you're giving. So before you give, what you do, you give it for the animals, you conduct LD50 to fix the dosage. If it is lethal, toxic or whatever it is, then you go for acute and chronic toxicity studies. All these things are being done, then you establish this drug is very good in acid peptic disorders, this drug is very good in ascites, this is very good for rejuvenation of nerves, etc. So instead of doing all these techniques in bioinformatics, what happens is, say for example, the person need to land up into cirrhosis of liver because of particular components. These proteins and amino acids are being derailed. So there what happens, there is some pathology which has happened there, and those amino acids and proteins are being already been identified by the system in the softwares like the Linux and all. Then later on what happens, you have given a particular drug. Say for example, I want to prepare Arogyavardhini and give it to a patient of cirrhosis of liver. So there what's happening, by giving the Arogyavardhini, before I give it, what I do, I send it for analysis. I send it for some XRD, I send it for XRF, I do FTIR, NMR, TEM, everything, and this data is being fed to the computer. By giving all this data, the computer will itself design a structural formula of the drug whichever you have given it to it. And by that, what happens? A structural formula is being established of Arogyavardhini here, for example, or any drug whichever you are subjecting it for bioinformatics. So it establishes a structural formula, and this structural formula links with all the thousands of amino acids and proteins which is there in the human body. And by this permutations and combinations, it fixes at various amino acids and proteins. And this particular amino acids and proteins where it is being linked with is being projected to you in the system. And it gives what energy your body might need to get linked to this. So lesser the energy is needed, the drug action is very quick. In case if the computer gives you, it needs a very high energy levels to bind it, then it gives a very delayed effect. Say for example, you'll take some weeks or months or years sometimes to get treated or get addressed with the situation. This job is being done by a computer. So almost it is something like what work we are doing through the animals might be in the form of an animal experimentation and all. Possibly, I use the word possibly, most of those things can be done through a computer. If you have a very dedicated person to do it, hardly 6 months is enough to establish one whole drug. So in case, imagine what in case if much of the institutes think about this particular mechanism of bioinformatics and establish a great thought process by which almost more than 1 lakh formulations used in Rasashastra could be established through bioinformatics. So people of the bioinformatics are able to establish many things on a herbal ground, because establishing the alkaloid level and etc. in the form of either you go for HPTLC or anything and other investigations needed. Establishing a structural formula of a biological or a herbal molecule is much easier. But of a metallic molecule, metallomineral or herbometallomineral composition is a bit tough. You need to do some work, not some work, lots of work on this area, because no much work is being really established or which has been done. As a part of personal interest, we have done it on Hemagarbha once upon a time, not recently, and that is being projected. But basically, this is about bioinformatics. To put it back into the brackets, let me say whatever the drug you have prepared, it's been sent for the analysis at various centers where you perform all the investigations to know what are the biological or what are the various molecules which are present in it, and that is been fed to the computer. The computer ascertains itself and it designs itself with a structural formula. That particular formula try to get linked with all the amino acids and other proteins in the body, which makes it to ascertain or makes it to understand like this particular molecule get fits to this particular amino acid, by which you come to know that it acts at a DNA level to this extent with so much of energy needed. And if this theory has been established, which is been totally done by a computer, very simply in a simple small computers, and you can establish much of the things. So this is very much needed, and this is the need of the hour, because you have many things where we are unable to do through animals. And you can be more pinpointing here also. Say for example, I don't want to see with all the 33,000 amino acids in the body or proteins, various proteins in the body. I just want to see, like, I have prepared rajavarta basma, whether this is good for madatyaya or not. I can be more specific also. So what happens, there are some amino acids and proteins which gets derailed in the patients of alcohol conditions. So only the action of Rajavarta in Madhatyaya alone can also be established. But you have time or you want to establish the total therapeutic guidelines, you can allow the system to work. It works on all the molecules of the body and gives you an end picture. So this is a very beautiful and very, very adaptive mechanism called as bioinformatics, which can be worked upon by many of us at especially the institutional level, by which you can come across many of the things which is happening. Let us try to see a few more things. So to understand few more things, we need to know something about what is Metallomix. So this is also a very interesting thing, because usually we think so like metals which we are using is just a heavy metal toxicity. People usually, it happens like people make us to wander around. Once we start discarding the rasa medicines, people of the West might adopt it in extensive way and rename themselves that they are the masters of rasa shastra tomorrow. They name it as Metallomix. But anyway, let us try to see what it is. It's nothing but a new interdisciplinary science that arises from the growing needs. And this particular thing is where it needs to be taken with lots of metals in the body at a biological level, which we call it as a biochemistry of the organism. A metal is linked to various biological molecules of the body. The science to deal this particular science is called as metallomics, and this is a very new interdisciplinary science, and this is of very significant in need today. So metal transporters in the body, like for the loha basma, there it is sft nramp2 nramp-m1. Jasada basma or zinc molecules, it is znt or nramp2. Tamra basma or copper, ctr nramp2 wnd mnk. Similarly, you have it for Abraka or Naga, manganese or magnesium. Naga is lead. Parada or mercurial preparations, it is LAT. So we have certain transporters in the body. As I said in the initial part of my presentation, once when you are giving some basma, it doesn't go into every part and parcel of the body. Instead, it is being stimulated through some transporters, by which it is having its own channel to move to the target levels, or it stimulates through the receptors by which the action is seen in the organ. So these are the various transporters of the various metals in the body. Of course, every metal has its own receptors, but we don't know all of them still. We are supposed to work a lot about this phenomenon. But anyway, what are the other pharmaceutical companies and bioinformatics? I want to put up an industry. In what way will this help me? In what way will this bioinformatics help me? Bioinformatics teams play a critical role in creating a framework that can support the needs of the information based on R&D. So research and development, this is a great boon, which could be very much helpful. And also the availability of the several genome sequence is just the beginning. Scientists want to understand the genes, their functioning and the role they play in the prevention, diagnosis and treatment of the disease. The ultimate goal is to identify the pattern in the information that can be used to develop more therapeutics or drugs. So it is very much benefited for all, either for prevention or diagnosis or treatment. In all the means, bioinformatics is very useful. And also the scientists are also engaged in study of the proteins, their functions and interactions. So it is usually very much, as I said already, it is a link between the protein, gene, sequence, and the metals, minerals, whatever it is, which is taken as the bioinformatics. So it is very much useful for understanding the biological drug designing. And also it is used for as a drug markers, because people very easily blame our science, especially Rasashastra, like it's a placebo effect. I don't know with a placebo effect if at all we can fool people right from 4th and 5th century to 20th century. Centuries together we are able to fool people in the name of placebo effect. What in case if we really had the therapeutic effect of our drugs? Just like a mani dharana chikitsa, like abracadabra, we are making miraculous responses in the patients. Right from a simple rhinitis to the most complicated malignancies we are able to cure many times. And everything whichever you treat is named as placebo. Whichever is happening as a success rate by the contemporary sciences is taken as a huge success. So this is the most pathetic way. Possibly we need to establish much of the theories of these kinds so that we can make them to understand the science in their language, possibly. But anyway, drug markers, whether this drug has really done this effect or not. The Mrutyunjaya Rasa which I have given is really acted as a Jwaragna or not. It has been established by the bioinformatics by establishing the drug markers, which believe that proteomics understand will lead to the new therapies that will revolutionize the way diseases are diagnosed and treated. So this is also very good and very helpful to say about. Many times we see some of the doctors prescribing some 8 or 10 drugs. I will say instead of prescribing 8 or 10 molecules to the patient, it's better which is really acting on the patient can be prescribed. Might be one drug or two drugs. That is bioinformatics, which could support you. Thus, with the help of the bioinformatics, scientists are trying to develop the effective therapeutic molecules that are more safe, less toxic, and have better bioavailability. So it is a huge boon, or this could be a huge ladder as a drug discovery. And also, it is very much useful for inventing new drugs or understanding the drugs which we are using in our science, which could be a great support and a huge ladder for analyzing things. If you have small alterations in an individual, say for example, a person is landed up with some rhinitis, there is some small repair which has happened in the helix, which has happened at a DNA level in the patient, in a protein or amino acid, or at a level at a gene. The body system might be, you name it as Rasayana, Vyadikshitva, or Patya Patya Palana, or Nidana Parivarjana, or Ojas, Bala, Balya, whatever. If they can repair this particular small injury which has happened there and clinically presented as a small disease, then the person is out of the illness. Wonderful. But in case if it happens like the repair is huge, there is lots of insult which is happened to the helix or to the molecules or to the genes, then the repair is very difficult. Then what happens? You have to give them certain set of drugs which can repair this tissue, which can re-establish these genes and molecules, which can really have that therapeutic efficacy to treat. Then the person will be back to normalcy. In case if you are unable to treat or do or manage this condition, then the things will go out of reach. Very common example is the malignancies, irrational growth. of the cells in the body because you're unable to control it. So you have many such examples which can be understood here. So this is what is happening, and this is how you can establish. So through the bioinformatics, you're able to design a particular drug which is acting in this part of the protein or an amino acid. Then you can be more pinpointing. You can choose a drug which can repair it. There is a problem there, and there's popped up substances what you see there, or the biological drugs which you have given, and might be it is Arogyavardhini, might be it is Mrutyunjay Rasa, might be it is Swarnabhasma or Hemagarbha Putali. And that particular thing is been repairing that particular tissue, and it is establishing the normalcy by which you can find the health benefits in an individual. So this is how the theory is to be established. This is how you can understand the science of bioinformatics. So here what we have done is it was just a very casual study, like the Hemagarbha Potali was being prepared, and the ingredients of the Hemagarbha Potali are Parada, Gandhaka, Swarna, Tamra, and everything is being triturated with the juice of aloe vera, Kumari, and it is being prepared in the form of Potali Kalpana, and where we have prepared it and we have used it. Usually, I extensively use lots of potalis in my clinical practice, and this is one such example as Hemagarbha potali, which I usually use in the patients of brain tumor malignancies, many types of malignancies, but especially in cerebrovascular accidents or um, disorders of the central nervous system where the brain is being affected, or the brain tumors. I was very much interested to know if at all the components like copper, gold, mercury, and sulfur in the combination of Hemagarbha potali can establish their therapeutic efficacy at the level of brain barrier. Was my interest, wherein we have prepared this medicine, and we have given it to the um, Department of Bioinformatics to establish it, and we could really establish a wonderful response. We could find excellent response in the bioinformatics, where we can find with a very limited amount of energy consumed by the body, the Hemagarbha potali was able to get assimilated in the brain receptor protein, and it could repair much of the tissue there. It could repair much of the tissue, which was very much fruitful or very much useful, and that is the reason in all the patients of brain tumor I mandatorily use Hemagarbha potali. But one thing, I prepare it by myself and then use it in my patients. I could not get the video directly into the PowerPoint presentation. So once I have a couple of slides, once this get over, I'll show you the video of how the brain receptor protein is being linked with the Hemagarbha potali molecule and how it is being absorbed or observed in the brain. So this is in just about the bioinformatics and how a biological drug designing could be carried out, and how best we can improvise ourselves in understanding this new branch of the modern science and establish the sacred thoughts of Ayurveda, and try to uh, uh, re-establish our theories. It's not like I have any doubts on my acharyas. I have a very strong belief on Aptavachana. Because it's explained in the textbook, I'm prescribing it to my patient. I'm really appreciating lots of therapeutic benefits to the patients. But still, to establish them on the grounds of bioinformatics, a small venture was being carried out. And this particular mechanism is called as docking mechanism. This procedure is called as a docking of Hemagarbha potali, and you can see there is a structure there in the brain. This is the whole thing is a brain receptor protein, and you can see the Hemagarbha potali, the structure of it being very beautifully linked to the brain receptor protein, and it has shown a very good health benefit in the individual because it was pre-established already through the biological drug designing, and later on this was being administered to the patient. We could not really go with animal experimentations, toxicity studies, etc. It's a straightforward classical preparation. There is nothing as anubhuta which has been added up to this, and the thing was being established through the bioinformatics and metallomix, and based on that given to the patient. I am prescribing this drug at least from past 20 years with a tremendous response in my patients. So this is about the docking mechanism of Hemagarbha Potali.
After performing the docking, we can get
So in the nature of infinite books of secrecy, a little I can read. This is a very small venture which we have done. It's not a great thing. It's not something like very miraculously something has happened. We have tried our best to establish things, and it's not really that easy. And always not at an institutional level. It was done at a personal level. So entering into every department and trying to make the things happen from our end, it's not really that easy, because nobody gives you a welcome board. You have lots of things which you need to understand by yourself, might be with great interest and lots of patience. Try to go with it, but really it is fruitful. Administering this, you gain lots of confidence, and also many of the people will have lots of confidence, because you can see the things what's happening inside the body. Might be you name it as the pratyaksha pramana, because it's an objective criteria. So this is what I would like to establish or try to understand only on the grounds of Hemagarbha Potali through the biological drug designing and bioinformatics docking mechanism. So thank you very much. Be linked with me at www.iiar.co.in, and for more details, I shall I shall try to see if at all I can share with the video of it.
Thank you, sir, for
Yeah,
this session. Is a amalgamation of texture reference with contemporary science. Uh,
yeah.
it was very nice. If anybody is having question, you may ask in chat box.
after performing the docking, we can get 10 of the way in which the ligand forms a nitrogen bond with the protein.
So any of the doubts, anything like we can discuss.
We'll wait for 2 minutes for any question. Otherwise,
Sure,
we'll
sir.
end up with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
session.
definitely, definitely.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes, sir. Actually, this is out of box question. We talked about the metallic these things, but when all there is always they ask about our massages, like how your oil is absorbed in the body. So is it real? Like is it absorbed in the body or how it works?
Very simple thing I would like to explain is, you try to work upon with cutting the lemon for some time. Our hand, the skin fingers gets shrunken off. You get folds in your finger. Or when you are into a swimming pool which is having lots of chlorine in it, your skin starts a sort of shrinking. You get a sort of folds in your skin, especially in your palms. Why? because the amount of chlorine which has been absorbed or the amount of lemon which is absorbed into the body, you have something called as isotonic and hypertonic and hypotonic solutions. Through the means of osmosis, there is always a sort of the drug exchange which is happening outside the body and inside the body. Very simple phenomenon: take some small resins and put them into water, they blot. How this is happening? The same thing happens by pouring the oils on the body. Even the body, you have lots of these oils getting absorbed into the system, and you have lots of the therapeutic efficacy in the humans as well. It's not like just a pleasure treatment. It definitely has its therapeutic effect.
Thank you very much, sir.
Uh, yeah, there is a question like, yeah, definitely, it's not like the humans are having each thing, the human body is having it. There are some receptors which are very active in the gut. There are some receptors which are very active in the respiratory system. There are some receptors which are very active in the heart, cardiac system. So we have from area to area, they do differ. But yes, humans have it. All these experiments or whichever is being explained is through the system. It's not through the animals. It's for the humans.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah.
Sir, then how can we locate that this proper drug should be given to this drug or some this particular disease?
Uh, the voice is too feeble. Can you?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir. Then how can we get this drug should be given in this disease? How to understand, sir? As there are different receptors for different metals at different places.
Yes, definitely. See, that's the reason why bioinformatics is a boon to us. Say, for example, I know what Tamra Basma do as per the textbook. I know what Loha Basma do as per the textbook. I have a gross idea about it. Say, for example, tomorrow I prepare a cobalt Basma. I don't know what is the therapeutic guidelines of it. So what I do is through bioinformatics, I try to give it to the system. It establishes with all the molecules of the body. And it gives you for this particular molecule, the therapeutic effect will be so good. For this, it will be so feeble. Then you can establish the therapeutic guidelines of the new drugs. That is what we call it as a biological drug designing for the new drugs. So it is very much possible. It can be done.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So any more doubts? So shall we conclude the class, sir?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much to one and all.